Welcome to DIYEasyCrafts.com. Today we're going to take a look at wrapping guides in our building a custom fishing rod tutorial. Now I made this patriotic themed spinning rod. It's a red, white, and blue themed rod. And in the process I learned quite a bit about building custom rods. Today we're going to cover wrapping the guides or attaching the guides onto the rod blank. The first step is going to be the guide prep. Most of these guides, the foot is a little bit too thick, a little bit too fat. And you have to kind of grind that down a bit so that you have a real smooth transition with thread that's actually going to hold these things in place. Now you can do this with a file. I like to do it with a Dremel grinder. It doesn't take long. The next step, or the next step in the process, is going to be to temporarily attach those guides to the rod blank. You can do that with these little guide tubing cut into, it almost looks like a little O-ring, and they can temporarily hold that guide into place. You can also do it with some tip-top glue, which you just heat up with a flame. Apply a little of the molten glue right onto the foot of the base, and apply the guide where you want it. Or you could do it with a little piece of masking tape. You only have to hold it on long enough so that until the thread holds it in place. Now, of course, you're going to have to measure out where you want each one of these guides, and you measure down from the tip. I'll cover that in another video where I'm going to do the complete build. Now, I'm going to use a CRB advanced hand wrapping system, which was a very convenient tool. It allows the thread to hold tension, the proper tension while you're wrapping it. It's got a series of little eye loops so that you can get that thread to be exactly where you want it to be. You set the tension on the thread knob so that that tensioning wand should point directly at you. So if it's pointing too high, there's not enough tension. If it's pointing too low, there's too much tension. Now, the wrapping is pretty easy. You wrap a couple of wraps around and then just hold that loose line. Bring the taut line from left over the top of the other two wraps and then begin wrapping so that the wrapped thread locks everything in place. And you'll have to experiment with it a couple times until you get comfortable. You can then clip off the loose end, and with a burnishing tool, if your threads aren't lined up against each other, you can use the burnishing tool to kind of push everything snug. And then you can just start to hand wrap. And you're going to wrap this thread up onto the foot of the guide so that the threads are now holding that guide in place. And once you've got enough threads holding the guide in place, you can remove that masking tape in this case. And as you become more sophisticated in the rod building, you can add different colors onto this thread. You could add, you could really vary it up nicely and really make it your own creation. So I'm going to just remove this masking tape, and then I'm going to continue to wind this thread until I'm about 5 or 6 winds from the end point where I want to stop winding. And the whole time I'm just trying to keep that thread taut against the previous wrap. Now, I'm new at this, so if you end up with some spacing, as I have now, again, you just go back to that burnishing tool and push firmly. You can really secure everything up so it visually looks perfect. Now, to wrap it up, like I said, you stop 5 or 6 wraps from the end. I'm just going to take a short loop of thread. I made it a different color just so you can see it better. And then you want to wrap another 4 or 5 times so that your wrapping is as wide as you want it to be and as far up on the guide as you want it to be. Again, I just went to the burnishing tool just to firm everything up. And now I'm going to put my finger on the back of the thread to hold it in place. I snipped it, and I'm going to place it through that loop, and then I'm going to hold it taut. Hold it taut, and then I'm going to grab both ends of the blue loop and pull it through. So the blue loop is going to grab onto the red thread and pull it through. And then with a razor blade, you don't want to cut with the razor, just apply pressure, holding that razor nice and flat against the threads, and you end up with a nice clean cut. You just inspect your work. I've got some China marker on there where I had marked the spine. I can just wipe that off before I coat it. Now the final step is coating that wrapping, or coating the threads. I'm using this Pro Coat epoxy. It's a two-part epoxy. It comes with syringes, each one marked red and blue. So if you continue to use the right syringe for the right glue, it'll never dry on you in that syringe, and you can continue to use the syringe. You have to mix this stuff completely or thoroughly for at least 5 minutes, mixing it very slowly. I've also got a CRB drying system, or drying rack. It just slowly turns the rod blank so that after you apply the epoxy, with it turning, it's not going to end up dripping, and hopefully it's going to end up being a nice even coat. I'm applying the epoxy with a disposable paintbrush. You want to apply enough epoxy so that the threads are completely saturated and that the threads are completely encapsulated in the epoxy. Now for the red, white, and blue themed rod that I'm making, the white thread did not work out very well on this first pole that I made. The white thread actually became transparent. So I'll correct that on the second pole. I have an idea how I'm going to correct that. I used a heat gun, not a lot of heat, just very quickly, and it gets rid of all the bubbles, or any bubbles that remained in the epoxy. And that's basically it. A very easy way to wrap the guides and secure the guides onto a rod blank. Please like and subscribe to this video so you can see the complete build. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check us out on the web at DIYeasycrafts.com. Thank you very much for watching.